A worker at the Lubbock, Texas landfill spotted something that didn't belong among the mountains of garbage. A navy blue suitcase, brand new, sitting on top of rotting debris. When he unzipped it, his hands started shaking. Inside was a young woman's body, folded up like a broken doll, her red hair matted with dried blood. The discovery would unleash an investigation that would span 2 cases, 18 months of terror, and reveal a digital predator who thought technology made him untouchable. A man who used the internet to hunt his victims, who left digital breadcrumbs at every turn, who believed he was too smart to get caught. He was catastrophically wrong, because the same technology that helped him find his victims would ultimately lead investigators straight to his door. And what they discovered would chill an entire community to its core. September 13th, 2005. The call came into the Lubbock Police Department early that morning. A body had been found at the city landfill. Detective Sarah Martinez and her team rushed to the scene, not knowing what they were about to walk into. The landfill stretched out like a wasteland. Mountains of refuse piled high under the brutal Texas sun. The smell was overwhelming. Rotting food, chemicals, decay, the stench of a city's discarded waste baking in 100-degree heat. Workers pointed Martinez toward the suitcase that sat incongruously among the trash, too new and clean to belong there. Martinez approached carefully, already knowing this wasn't going to be good. When she looked inside, her jaw clenched. This was going to be one of those cases that stayed with her forever. The kind that haunts you late at night when you're trying to fall asleep. The kind that makes you question humanity. The young woman inside had red hair, pale skin, and had clearly suffered tremendously before passing away. She'd been folded into the suitcase in an unnatural position, her body showing signs of severe trauma. She was naked, vulnerable, discarded like she was nothing. The medical examiner's report would later reveal the full horror. Summer Lee Baldwin, 29 years old, mother of 4 children who were waiting for her to come home. She'd suffered approximately 50 blunt force wounds to her head and body. The beating had been savage, relentless, brutal. She'd been assaulted in the worst possible way. And here's the most chilling detail that would haunt everyone who worked this case. She may have still been breathing when someone zipped her into that suitcase and tossed her in the trash like garbage. Summer was also 10 weeks pregnant. An unborn child, never given a chance at life, gone along with its mother. The bruises on Summer's knuckles told another part of the story. She'd fought back. She'd refused to go quietly. She'd clawed and punched and struggled against her attacker with everything she had. But her attacker had been too strong, too violent, too determined, too trained in combat techniques from his Marine service. Martinez looked at the crime scene, if you could even call a landfill a crime scene, and felt the weight of the challenge ahead. No witnesses. The actual location where Summer had been attacked was unknown. The body had been transported here in a suitcase, meaning evidence could be anywhere in Lubbock, or nowhere. Summer could have been attacked in a house, a hotel, a car, an alley, anywhere in the city or even outside city limits. But Martinez had been doing this job long enough to know that killers always make mistakes. Always. No matter how careful they think they're being, no matter how smart they believe they are, no matter how much they plan, they leave something behind. Some clue, some thread that, when pulled, unravels their entire plan. Some piece of evidence that connects them to the crime they thought they'd committed perfectly. The question was, what had this killer left behind? What mistake had he made that would lead them to justice for Summer? The answer came from the suitcase itself. It was brand new, tags still attached. And on one of those tags was a barcode, a seemingly insignificant detail that would become the killer's downfall. Martinez had the barcode scanned and traced. It led to a Walmart on the South Loop in Lubbock. The purchase had been made at 3 a.m. on September 12th, the same morning Summer's body was discovered at the landfill. Think about that timing for a second. Whoever bought this suitcase did so in the early hours of the morning, likely right after ending Summer's life. They went to Walmart at 3 a.m., bought a suitcase specifically to dispose of her body, and then dumped her at the landfill before most of the city had even woken up. Martinez pulled the store's security footage. The timestamp showed 3:17 a.m. A stocky Hispanic male in his mid-20s walked through the empty aisles with purpose. He grabbed a navy blue suitcase from the luggage section. Then he picked up a package of latex gloves. Let that sink in. This person was buying supplies to dispose of a body at 3 a.m. This wasn't someone panicking. This was someone who knew what they were doing. But here's his first critical mistake. He paid with a debit card, not cash. A debit card that could be traced directly back to him. Through a federal subpoena, Martinez got the name attached to that card: Rosendo Rodriguez III. He lived in San Antonio, but had been in Lubbock recently. He was a Marine reservist who'd come to town for his monthly training, which included martial arts and combat techniques. Hotel records placed Rodriguez at the Holiday Inn on Avenue Q. When investigators searched his room, they found exactly what they were looking for. Blood spatter on the carpet, blood on the box springs, blood on the sheets. This was where Summer had been attacked. In the hallway trash can, investigators found the latex gloves from Walmart. DNA testing revealed both his DNA and Summer's DNA on those gloves. The net was closing, fast. Rodriguez was arrested on September 15th, 2005, just days after Summer's body was discovered. When investigators executed search warrants on his home in San Antonio, they seized his computer, his phone, and various personal items, including a green shirt that matched the one seen in the Walmart security footage. What they found on Rodriguez's computer was deeply disturbing. He'd been obsessively following news coverage of Summer's case. Every article published about the body found in the landfill, every update from police, every piece of media coverage, he'd been reading it all. Watching the investigation unfold like someone admiring their own handiwork. But then Martinez found something else in his search history. Something that made her blood run cold and changed the entire trajectory of the investigation. Joanna Rogers. A name that had haunted Lubbock law enforcement for over a year, Rodriguez had been searching for information about Joanna Rogers. He'd read articles about her disappearance. He'd downloaded photographs of her. He'd been following her case with the same obsessive interest he'd shown in Summer's case. The parallels were impossible to ignore. Both victims were young women with red hair. Both had vanished without a trace. And now Rodriguez's computer showed he had a clear interest in both of them. Martinez felt that sinking feeling in her gut, the one every detective gets when they realize a case is bigger and darker than they initially thought. They weren't just looking at one horrific ending. They were potentially looking at two, maybe more. 18 months earlier, on May 3, 2004, 16-year-old Joanna Rogers had kissed her mother, Kathy, goodnight and gone to bed. Her parents, Kathy and Joe Bill Rogers, had no reason to think this night would be any different from thousands of others. When Kathy went to wake Joanna the next morning, her daughter's room was empty. The bed looked slept in, but Joanna was gone. And here's what made it so strange. Her favorite coat was still there. Her wallet, her car keys, her cell phone. Everything a teenager would normally take with them if they were leaving the house was still in her room. Joanna had simply vanished, as if she'd never existed. The Rogers family immediately contacted police. Lubbock County Sheriff David Gutierrez held a press conference, alerting the community to Joanna's disappearance. He told reporters that the fact she'd left all her personal belongings behind was of major concern, suggesting she had no intention of leaving permanently. Volunteers and law enforcement spread out across Lubbock County. They knocked on doors, they mailed flyers, they taped posters to every business window they could find. They searched fields, abandoned buildings, anywhere a teenage girl might be hidden or held. Months passed. Joanna's 17th birthday came and went. The investigation had yielded almost nothing. No leads, no clues, no answers. Just a family trapped in limbo, not knowing if their daughter was alive or gone, if she'd run away or been taken, if she'd ever come home. Kathy and Joe Bill lived in purgatory, clinging to hope while fearing the worst. Every time the phone rang, they jumped. Every time a police car drove by, their hearts stopped. They couldn't move forward, couldn't grieve, couldn't do anything but wait and wonder. Now, 18 months later, Rodriguez's computer searches suggested their worst fears might be reality. Martinez dug deeper into Rodriguez's phone records. What she found was terrifying. In the weeks leading up to Joanna's disappearance, Rodriguez had been calling the Rogers family home. Specifically, he'd been calling Joanna's bedroom landline, a separate line that went directly to her room. He'd called multiple times, always late at night. Always when Joanna would be alone in her room. On the night Joanna disappeared, May 3rd, Rodriguez had made his final call to her bedroom at 2 a.m. Investigators believed he'd told her he was waiting outside, that he'd convinced her to sneak out, that he'd lured her away from the safety of her home in the middle of the night. Evidence also showed that Rodriguez had initially met Joanna in an online chat room. This was the early 2000s, when internet safety wasn't as widely understood as it is today. Chat rooms were popular with teenagers, and predators knew it. Rodriguez had used that technology to find Joanna, to befriend her, to build trust with her over time. He was a digital predator in every sense. Someone who used modern technology to hunt, to stalk, to destroy. Martinez knew they needed to find Joanna's body. The Rogers family deserved answers. They deserved closure. They deserved to be able to bury their daughter properly instead of living in this awful limbo where they couldn't move forward, couldn't grieve, couldn't do anything but exist in a horrible state of not knowing. But here's the problem. The Lubbock landfill covers 1,260 acres. That's larger than 3 football fields. And it contained 2 years' worth of city garbage, hundreds of thousands of tons of refuse, piled stories high. Finding one suitcase in all of that was like finding a needle in a haystack made of nightmares. It seemed impossible. Many people said it was impossible, that they should give up before they even started. The prosecutor, Matt Powell, made what he called a deal with the devil. He told Rodriguez that if he would confess to what happened to Joanna and tell them where to find her body, the state would take the death penalty off the table. Rodriguez would get life in prison instead. It was a bitter pill to swallow, giving a confessed double offender a lighter sentence, but Powell knew the Rogers family needed answers more than they needed maximum punishment at that moment. Rodriguez took the deal. He confessed that he'd met with Joanna the night she disappeared. He said they'd argued. He claimed he'd strangled her, put her body in a suitcase, just like he'd done with Summer, and thrown it in a dumpster. He gave them approximate locations, approximate dates. but nothing precise. It was just enough information to make the search seem possible, but not enough to make it easy. With Rodriguez's confession in hand, authorities organized a massive search of the landfill. Hundreds of volunteers showed up to help. Not just law enforcement, but ordinary citizens from Lubbock who'd been following Joanna's case, who wanted to help bring her home. They dug through rat-infested debris, through disease-ridden waste, through conditions that were dangerous and disgusting and hazardous to their health. The smell was overwhelming, enough to make people vomit. The heat was brutal, with temperatures regularly exceeding 100 degrees. Volunteers had to wear protective gear, masks, gloves, boots. The risk of infection from cuts and scrapes was constant. The danger of equipment accidents was real. But they kept going because a family needed answers. Because Joanna deserved to be found. Because giving up wasn't an option when a 16-year-old girl was out there, somewhere, discarded like trash, waiting to come home. The search lasted 12 weeks. 12 long, grueling weeks of digging through garbage, of hoping every pile might contain the suitcase they were looking for, of trying not to give up even when it seemed impossible. Every day they dug. Every day they found nothing. Every day the odds seemed worse. Some people suggested they should stop, that the risks outweighed the chances of success, that maybe they'd never find her, that maybe Rodriguez had lied about the location, that maybe the suitcase had been destroyed by equipment or buried so deep they'd never reach it. But the volunteers refused to quit. Love and determination drove them forward through every awful day. Kathy and Joe Bill Rogers came to the landfill regularly, watching the search, praying for a miracle, refusing to give up hope even when everyone around them was losing faith. And then, on a day when some were ready to call it quits, when the search was scheduled to end because they'd run out of places to look, a backhoe moved a pile of trash and uncovered what everyone had been searching for. Another suitcase containing another broken body with red hair. Dental records confirmed what everyone already knew in their hearts. Joanna Rogers had finally come home. Roughly 900 days after she disappeared, 2.5 years of not knowing, of wondering, of hoping against hope. Her family could finally lay her to rest. That was the last day they were going to dig. One more day, and they would have given up. One more day, and Joanna would have remained lost forever. But love and persistence had paid off in the most unlikely way possible. With both bodies recovered and Rodriguez in custody, the full picture became crystal clear. Rodriguez had a type: young women with red hair. He was methodical and calculating. He used technology to find his victims. He'd met Joanna in an online chat room, building trust with her until she agreed to sneak out. He'd called her bedroom line repeatedly, grooming her, manipulating her. With Summer, Rodriguez had been in Lubbock for Marine training. He'd found her and arranged to meet her at his hotel room. In both cases, Rodriguez overpowered his victims, beat them unconscious, and purchased supplies with brazen confidence. He used his debit card at Walmart. He left DNA evidence. He created detailed digital footprints. Why? Because he thought he was untouchable. He was a Marine, trained in combat. He thought buying a suitcase and latex gloves at 3 a.m. was being careful. He thought wearing gloves meant he wouldn't leave evidence. But he was wrong. His DNA mixed with both victims' DNA. His digital footprints mapped every step of his crimes. His cell phone records traced his movements. His computer searches revealed his obsessions. The man who thought technology made him invisible had actually created a detailed record of his own evil. Rodriguez's trial for Summer's elimination began in 2008. But there was a problem. Rodriguez had backed out of his plea deal. After confessing to what happened to Joanna in exchange for avoiding the death penalty, he'd changed his mind and withdrawn his guilty plea. The prosecution was furious. They put the death penalty back on the table. The evidence was overwhelming. The Walmart surveillance footage, the debit card records, the hotel room covered in Summers' blood, the latex gloves with DNA from both Rodriguez and Summer, the computer searches showing his obsession with both victims. But the prosecution went further. They brought in 5 women, including Rodriguez's high school girlfriend, who testified that he'd assaulted them. 5 women who'd survived encounters with Rodriguez. 5 women whose testimonies painted a picture of a serial predator. The jury also heard about Joanna Rogers during the punishment phase. They learned about Rodriguez's computer searches related to her case. They heard how he'd called her bedroom line the night she disappeared. They learned about his confession. Rodriguez's defense attorneys tried to argue self-defense in Summer's case, claiming she'd pulled a knife on him. But the medical examiner's testimony destroyed that claim. Summer had 50 blunt force wounds. She'd been beaten savagely. There was no knife. There was only brutal, calculated violence. The defense also suggested that maybe a trash compactor at the landfill had caused some of Summer's injuries. The jury didn't buy it. It took the jury less than 3 hours to find Rodriguez guilty of capital offense. During the punishment phase, they heard all the additional evidence about the other assaults and about Joanna's case. The verdict came back. Execution. Rosendo Rodriguez III spent nearly 10 years on death row in Texas. He filed multiple appeals, all of which were denied. He claimed his constitutional rights had been violated. He argued that evidence had been improperly obtained. He insisted he deserved a new trial. The courts disagreed. The evidence against him was simply too overwhelming. The DNA, the surveillance footage, the computer searches, the witness testimony, the confessions. All of it pointed to one inescapable conclusion. Rodriguez was guilty, and he deserved the death penalty. On March 27, 2018, one day after his 38th birthday, Rosendo Rodriguez was executed by lethal injection at the Huntsville unit in Texas. Both families were there to witness it. Summer's mother, Uva Robach, brought an aunt. Joanna's parents, Kathy and Joe Bill Rogers, brought their son and a friend. They'd waited years for this moment. Years of grief, years of pain, years of wondering if justice would ever come. Rodriguez was asked if he had any final words. He spoke for 7 minutes, but he never apologized. Not once. He never expressed remorse for taking 2 young lives. He never acknowledged the pain he'd caused 2 families. Instead, Rodriguez used his final words to complain about the justice system. He asked people to boycott Texas businesses to pressure the state into ending the death penalty. He brought up a civil lawsuit he'd filed against Lubbock County. He asked the FBI to investigate the prosecutor's office. He ended by saying, "The state may have my body, but not my soul." Joe Bill Rogers, Joanna's father, sat in the witness room and watched Rodriguez die. Afterward, he told reporters, he wasn't a bit sorry. He didn't care. He was only interested in himself, and he is a sociopath. The lethal injection began at 6:24 p.m. Rodriguez was pronounced gone at 6:46 p.m. After 18 years of grief for the Rogers family and 13 years for the Baldwin family, Rosendo Rodriguez was finally gone. But could they call it closure? He deserved to die, Uva Robach said afterward. He sat there telling us how Jesus had wanted him to end those girls' lives, and it took everything I had not to jump through the window and choke him for it. The Rodriguez case transformed how law enforcement approaches digital evidence in violent crimes. What started as a barcode on a suitcase became a masterclass in modern forensic investigation that would be studied for decades to come. Detective Sarah Martinez later taught courses at the police academy, using this case as the cornerstone of instruction on digital forensics. She stood before rooms full of eager cadets, explaining how Rodriguez's fatal mistake wasn't in his planning. It was in his arrogance. He believed technology made him untouchable. He thought he was smarter than the system. He thought that buying a suitcase at 3 a.m. and wearing latex gloves showed sophistication and careful planning. But every technological tool he used left a permanent record. Every swipe of his debit card, every click on his computer, every call from his phone, every second captured on security cameras. He'd created an unbreakable chain of evidence against himself while thinking he was being clever. The Walmart barcode tracking system became a revolutionary model for retail cooperation with law enforcement. Store managers across the nation learned that their databases could become crucial weapons in fighting crime. What seemed like mundane inventory systems, just numbers on tags meant for tracking stock, could track killers and solve cases. Major retailers updated their systems, improved their record keeping, and established protocols for cooperating with law enforcement when those barcodes became evidence. Landfill search techniques, pioneered during the search for Joanna, transformed into standard protocol nationwide. The methodical grid system developed by volunteers became textbook procedure taught in forensic academies. Search and rescue teams study the Lubbock operation, learning how determination can overcome impossible odds. The specialized equipment designed for that 12-week nightmare now sits ready in departments across America, waiting for the next family that refuses to give up hope. Digital forensics methods developed during the investigation revolutionized police work. Cell tower tracking, computer search history analysis, online chat room monitoring. All of these became standard tools. The FBI created specialized units dedicated to catching digital predators. And Rodriguez's case features prominently in their training materials as the textbook example of how criminals expose themselves through their own technology use. The Rogers and Baldwin families emerged from grief as powerful advocates for missing persons. They speak at conferences, appear on national television, share their stories to help other families facing similar nightmares. Martha Rogers, Joanna's mother, developed a protocol for families of missing persons, a checklist of immediate actions to take, people to contact, evidence to preserve. That checklist became standard guidance distributed by missing persons organizations nationwide and has helped countless families navigate the worst moments of their lives. Summer's children, now grown and dealing with the loss of their mother in their own ways, established scholarship funds for forensic science students, ensuring future investigators have the tools and training they need to catch tomorrow's predators. The case proved that in the digital age, there truly is no perfect crime. Technology that enables predators also exposes them. Every click, every search, every purchase creates a trail. And that trail, no matter how faint someone thinks it is, can be followed by dedicated investigators who refuse to give up. Summer Lee Baldwin was 29 years old with 4 children who needed her. She was struggling, working in circumstances nobody should have to work in. But she was trying. She deserved so much better than what Rodriguez gave her. A brutal ending, her body discarded like trash. Her unborn child never getting a chance at life. Joanna Rogers was 16 years old, with her whole life ahead of her. She made the mistake of trusting someone she met online, someone who seemed nice at first, but turned out to be a monster. She snuck out of her house at 2 a.m. thinking she was meeting a friend. Instead, she met her end. Rosendo Rodriguez was a digital predator who used modern technology to hunt vulnerable young women. He thought his military training made him capable of getting away with it. He thought using latex gloves and buying a suitcase showed he was being careful. He thought his computer searches couldn't be traced, that his phone calls couldn't be tracked, that his debit card purchases were private. He was catastrophically wrong about all of it. The same technology that helped him find and stalk his victims created an unbreakable chain of evidence leading directly to him. The barcode on a suitcase, the security camera at Walmart, the GPS data from his phone, the search history on his computer, the DNA on latex gloves he thought protected him. Every piece of technology he used to commit his crimes became a piece of evidence used to convict him. In the end, justice was found in the most unlikely places. In a Lubbock landfill, among mountains of discarded trash, 2 young women were discovered and returned to their families. A tiny barcode unraveled a killer's entire world. Computer searches that fed an obsession became breadcrumbs leading police straight to his door. Rodriguez spent nearly 10 years on death row, still maintaining he deserved better treatment, still refusing to take responsibility, still believing he was somehow the victim. But the families he destroyed showed up to watch him take his final breath, and they walked away knowing that justice, however delayed, had finally been served. The hunter became the hunted. The digital breadcrumbs led home. And 2 families, after years of unimaginable pain, finally got some measure of peace. Technology doesn't make anyone untouchable. It makes them unforgettable for all the wrong reasons.